Good evening, brethren, and welcome to the ninth installment of the Grandmaster's Q&A session. My name is Dan Hotchkiss. I will be, again, your host for this evening, and I will just briefly outline the agenda for this evening. We're going to discuss a lot about the upcoming Grand Lodge annual and semi-annual communications, and hopefully answer any questions that you may have. But first and foremost, I certainly would like to thank you all for joining us again this evening. I hope you have found that these sessions are helpful and beneficial to you, and answer any questions and provide information for you that is relevant. At this time, I would like to introduce our most worshipful Grand Master of the most worshipful Grand Lodge of the ancient and honorable fraternity of free and accepted Masons of the state of New Hampshire, most worshipful brother Kenneth Ansel Clay Jr.
Thank you very much, Right Worshipful Brother Hotchkiss, and brethren all, good evening. It's great to be with you once again. As Dan said, we're primarily going to focus on the annual and semi-annual communications and how we're going to put forth what we hope to be a safe and secure event. So if you turn the clock back a little bit, back to about the late April, early May timeframe, we had an important decision to make. We were right in the middle of the initial phase of the COVID pandemic, and therefore the very difficult decision was made that we were going to suspend the annual communication and move it to November to be held in conjunction with the semi-annual communication. So a lot of the things that you're going to hear about tonight actually should have taken place back in May of 2020. So let's get right to it. What would have normally happened in that third Saturday in May, the night before, we would have had the Grand Master's banquet. And that banquet is primarily the Grand Master's opportunity to say thank you to those Grand Lodge officers who were with him during his first term. I wasn't able to do that. So we are going to have a Grand Master's banquet this coming Friday evening, the evening of November 20th. It's going to be held at the Best Western in Manchester, New Hampshire. And what I've done, because of what happened in May, is I'm inviting both those Grand Lodge officers who were Grand Lodge officers from 2019 to 2020 and stepped down in May of 2020, as well as those who either were previously Grand Lodge officers or continue to be, or are new Grand Lodge officers in the 2020-2021 year. So we should have a nice gathering of people. Right now, just from a safety standpoint, so that you know, we've done a really good job of some social distancing rules. You'll hear about that in more detail from David coming up here shortly. But we've got about 90 people that are going to be joining us for the banquet. Again, we've set it up in such a way that social distancing will be employed, temperature checks, contact tracing forms. So we've taken all the necessary precautions. Plus, we're dealing with a professional dining establishment that knows how to do this right and knows how to do it safely. So we're going to be dining together for those who have been invited on Friday evening, and we've got a nice agenda. There'll be some recognition of some guests. There'll be a few awards we're giving out. One change we're going to make is that we're going to be hearing from some of our appendant bodies who will be speaking on Friday night instead of Saturday. Then we're going to have some entertainment, and we will close for the evening. And then we're going to gather at Washington Lodge, or the Manchester Masonic Temple, on Saturday morning. Now, a little bit of a change here. Traditionally, we would open up Grand Lodge at 9:30 a.m. But this year, there are some specific safety requirements that have been put in place. One is that we cannot exceed 125 Masons or 125 people in the building. So to accommodate that, we've had to unfortunately limit the number of people from around the state that are able to come. That detail was provided to you in the form of a letter by the Grand Lodge office a week or two ago. So I'm asking for one representative from each lodge. Then we'll have Grand Lodge officers there, some past Grand Masters, and distinguished guests. So the agenda for that day is that Grand Lodge officers can arrive at 7:30 a.m. to help with setup. Other officers or members should plan to arrive by 8:30 a.m. We'll have a specific protocol for entering the building that you're going to hear about shortly. And then I ask that you proceed immediately upstairs and take your seat, because we're going to try and start promptly at 9 a.m. Now, the reason that we're starting at 9 a.m. is, again, for safety reasons. The decision has been made that we are not going to offer lunch. Because we're not going to offer lunch, what we would normally do is we would start at 9:30 a.m. and go until about 4 p.m. Unfortunately, because of the circumstances surrounding COVID, we're going to start at 9 a.m. I will attempt to limit any official business until 9:30 a.m. We'll then proceed to go through the annual and the semi-annual communication, with the goal of concluding our session around 12:30 in the afternoon. So for those that are used to staying for the day, we'll be departing around 12:30. So that will give you your afternoon and evening off. And I'm sure everyone will be pleased to hear about that. Now, with respect to the agenda itself, at 9 a.m., we're going to proceed to open up Grand Lodge, and we're going to open the annual communication. We will then introduce distinguished guests. We'll have a presentation of the colors by a few members from the Order of DeMolay. I'll then ask for comments from DeMolay and Rainbow, and we'll be making a special presentation to them at that time. As I'd said, this is the time when we would normally hear from all of our other guests, but that will take place on Friday night instead. That'll save us a bit of time. There'll then be an important vote that takes place regarding the potential merger of Harris Lodge and Horace Chase Lodge. I'll then introduce the past Grand Masters in attendance. There's just a very few pieces of legislation that we will deal with, but for the most part, any legislation that has been raised or is raised that day will be deferred until May because of our time constraints. There's quite a number of awards that will need to be distributed, and these are very deserving awards. A lot of these are for members of our craft who have spent many, many years toiling in the quarries and doing a fine job. So it's important that we recognize their work. Then I will provide a Grand Master's address. And what's interesting about that is most of that speech is a speech I would have provided in May of this year. So you'll be hearing the first year of my term, 2019-2020, and then I'll touch a little bit on what's taken place between the May 2020 and November 2020 timeframe. I will then suspend the annual communication, and I will open the semi-annual communication, which is what normally would have been taking place in the November timeframe. We will have a meeting regarding Masonic care, and you'll be hearing from Right Worshipful Hotchkiss more shortly about that. We'll then be voting on a potential merger of fraternal and unity lodges. I'll be assigning tellers, and the tellers will proceed to count the ballots. You'll be hearing more about the balloting process shortly. I'll then call on our Grand Treasurer, who has a presentation that he will be giving to provide everyone with a financial update. Then I am very pleased to announce that Right Worshipful Brother Ryan Flynn from our Education Committee will be providing a talk that I think does an excellent job of mixing my 4 pillars with something that we refer to as Masonic art. Ryan has done a number of these presentations in the past. He does a fantastic job. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what it is that he has to present. As you know, constitutionally in the semi-annual communication, we either have to put on a program of a Masonic nature, or we need to conduct degree work. So to make sure that we are abiding by our Constitution, Ryan will be performing that program. And then lastly, we will hear the results of the election of Grand Lodge officers. And I will then proceed to close our Grand Lodge. So that's a quick update on the agenda for our Friday evening Grand Masters Banquet and for our Saturday events. Just touching once again on attendance. Brethren, it's very important that we abide by the need to restrict to 125 people in the room to ensure that social distancing can be accommodated. The seats have all been marked out, so it's very clear where people can and cannot sit. But I would ask you please to respect our attendance requirements. If you have any questions as to whether or not you are allowed to attend the annual and semi-annual sessions, I would ask you to call the Grand Lodge office and they would be happy to provide you with that guidance. So, Right Worshipful Brother Hotchkiss, I think that touches on my initial items, and I will turn it now back to you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful. Appreciate that nice summary update of the planned events for the day, as well as stressing the importance of the attendance limitations that we are unfortunately facing. And now, brethren, to talk a little bit more specifically about the safety protocols, and particularly those that relate to COVID, is our Deputy Grand Master, Right Worshipful Brother David Collins. Right Worshipful?
Thank you, Right Worshipful Hotchkiss. Good evening, everybody. Great to be with you tonight. You know, the one thing that is always concerned to us is certainly the safety, right? I think that's our paramount concern anytime we're meeting as a group. And I think the one key thing that I know the Grand Master stated, it's been stated in the documents, but I can't reinforce enough. If you personally do not feel comfortable with attending these meetings, if you have health issues with yourself or your family, or if you're actually not feeling well, please do not come to the meeting. You know, certainly good communication is one thing we always learn, right? As you know, in our Masonic organizations, is just communicate that. Nobody is going to give you a hard time. The Grand Master will not be offended if you're not able to come, if you're not feeling well, have personal concerns. So a couple of things I just want to cover on is some of the basics really for Friday night and as well for Saturday. The first is this: for those of you that will be attending the dinner on Friday night, understand that the hotel, again, they're a professional food service organization. And a couple things to note is the Grand Master's Banquet, for any of you that have attended before, one thing you will note is we're going to use they're going to open up and use a much larger section of that whole facility. The tables will be very distanced. There'll be no more than 6 people per table, and all the tables will be at least 6 feet apart. And for any of you that have attended the Grand Master's Banquet, you will note that that's probably going to be a lot more spacious than it was before. There is not going to be the normal attendance, as there are individuals who are concerned about eating as a group, and for that reason will not be attending. So certainly in that perspective. The other thing is, you see these little lovely wands, right? So we have these at our lodges. So that will be when you come into the hotel, what they will ask is they will ask that you wear a mask as you enter, and you wear the mask the entire time until you're actually having a drink or sitting down to eat. As we're walking around, we need to be respectful of that. They're going to take your temperature. They're going to do some basic contact tracing of where you've been, who you've been in communication with. Just again, for everybody's safety, including your own. So again, I think this is something we're all very used to now, but it's something I cannot stress enough. The other thing I want to talk about, which is really important for Friday and for Saturday especially, is mask safety. You know, so here we go, these little masks. You know, one thing I want to talk about is this. There's a couple different types of masks that people use. Some of them use cloth masks. Some of them use this disposable mask. Please, a couple points on these masks. If you're using a disposable mask, you should be, after each and every time you go out for the day, you should be throwing that away and not reusing that. You know, the one thing I can't say I see around in the community, and occasionally sometimes at functions, is I see brethren using it with like little dirt stains on it. that says to me that either that night or you've been wearing it multiple times. These are one-time use masks. If you use these, please throw them away, have another. We will have, and the hotel will have, additional masks. However, you should plan to bring your own mask. So please do that. The other thing on these cloth masks, right? These cloth masks are wonderful. We can reuse them multiple times. They do a really good job of covering up. But, you know, again, one thing I can't stress enough is you've got to launder and wash these masks. Because think about this like the disposable mask. If I take this mask out and cover my face and I go out during the day and, you know, what do? It's normal. We just touch our face. I have the mask on. I touch my face. The point of laundering that is to get whatever germs off that. So please keep that in mind. And if you're coming Friday night, if you're coming Saturday and you use a cloth mask, you should launder those ahead of time. Put them in a Ziploc bag. On Friday night, you use that mask that you use. Then when you come on Saturday, you know, you should have a new cleanly laundered mask. And again, it's for, again, your safety, but the safety of everybody else. The other thing, and I know it's a challenge for everybody, is this. The point of the mask is to cover your mouth and nose, not just your mouth. Simply the reason why is this. If you sneeze, those are air droplets in the air. That's what causes the spread of COVID. I know it's challenging sometimes, and people kind of drop it for a bit because they can breathe a little better. Remember, when you're walking around, your mask should be covering your nose and your mouth. Just a common safety thing. And again, we're not the mask police here. We're not here to give you a hard time. We just want to make sure everybody stays safe. You know, the Grandmaster has certainly been very stressed out about this event, and we have as well, trying to put in some safety guidelines. We just ask that you kind of recognize them and be respectful of them, and understand that it's just for everybody's safety. So that kind of takes care of those on Friday night. On Saturday, as the Grandmaster stated, there will be a limited attendance to the meeting. There will be Grand Lodge officers who have been invited and one representative from each lodge. You know, the other thing I can't stress enough, brethren, is that, again, if you are going to be the representative and you get up that morning and you're not feeling well, and maybe you were going to be the only representative, it's okay if you don't come. Simply communicate that out, you know, to your district deputy, maybe to the Grandmaster. And if they don't get it till later in the morning, at least you've communicated that. Nobody wants to have somebody attending that's sick. We don't want that. We don't want you to be put in that situation. The other thing that you need to remember is that as you attend the meeting there's going to be a very specific way to go in. And the best way I would compare it to is, many of you are familiar, during the height of COVID, the supermarkets, I look in New Hampshire, like Market Basket became overwhelmed. And what they would do is in Walmart, and they would limit people the outside to come in. It's going to be the same thing, brethren. What it's going to be is we'll put over the door a little easy up tent, but we expect you, you know, we're not going to be marking out on the pavement. We expect you to social distance, meaning 6 feet, you know, spread apart from each other, and understand there's going to be a line of people going in the building. And you might want to, you know, wait a few minutes or whatever, wait in your car before you come out, but understand it may take a few minutes to go in. But there's some things that are going to help speed up the process, and you should really be aware and be prepared. The first thing is this contact tracing form. So this contact tracing form has been emailed to everybody. And the whole point of the contact tracing form is to gather information on you. So in the event that we do, heaven forbid, worst case scenario, we do have somebody that says, you know what, I attended and I tested positive the next day. We need to inform you. We need these contact tracing forms. These, brethren, you should not be standing outside filling these out. You should have them filled out previously. Keep them in your apron case, in your pocket, folded up. And when you come, what's going to happen is we'll ask you for the contact tracing form that we will review. We'll take your temperature, and everything is in order. You'll be allowed in the building. What I want to do is take a minute to talk about what is on this contact tracing form. What are we asking you? So we're asking you your name, your email, and your phone number. And that's only in the event of something happens. Understand these contact tracing forms, that we do consider them your private information. We do respect that. Everybody that will be screening was not looking to find an issue or share private information with you. The Grand Lodge office will hold on to these for a period of time. And once you've gotten past that with no instances, they will be shredded and destroyed. So understand, we will preserve your right to your information. But some things we're going to be asking you that I want to go over just quickly that you should be aware of are a concern if you're in this situation. Well, first one, did you travel to this function from outside New Hampshire? Well, we know there are brethren that are New Hampshire Masons that live in other states. Other states have guidelines and restrictions to come into New Hampshire, and we're simply doing that to confirm where you came from. Because if something happens, we may have to notify people. Okay, so any brethren coming to Grand Lodge in Manchester and coming from outside of the state of New Hampshire should look up and understand what the guidelines are for their state, and they should be respectful of those guidelines. You know, that's an obligation we take as Masons, that we respect our government and state guidelines. And again, brethren, this is one. We're not here to police it. We're not the mass police. We're just telling you, take your obligation seriously. The second set of questions goes through, have you traveled outside of New England in the past month? If so, what state or country did you travel to? How long were you gone? How long have you been back? And I'm going to tell you, brethren, this is a specific on there, because if you have traveled outside of New England, the state of New Hampshire does have a 14-day quarantine rule. So if you have traveled outside of New Hampshire less than 14 days without any signs or symptoms of COVID, you really should not be attending this meeting, because again, you're in violation of the New Hampshire state guidelines as put out by the governor, and we don't want to be in violation of that. So that will be something we'd ask, and we expect you to be truthful about it. Have you attended any functions with more than 50 people in attendance in the last month? Again, just looking to see what groups you've been in. It doesn't disqualify you. We want to know how many are in attendance and how many functions have you been to. We're just asking the question, again, for contact tracing, trying to be accurate on it. Have you had contact with anyone diagnosed with COVID-19? This is a critical question, because if you have, most likely you would already have got a COVID test, number one. And the other thing is, we hope that you have went by the quarantine rules. So if you answer yes on that, and you know that you have, but let's say, for example, this happened a month ago or weeks ago, you had a COVID test since with no issues, maybe put something on there. Because again, the people screening are going to be looking for that, and ask the question. The other most critical things, do you currently today have any of the following conditions? Fever, cough, breathing difficulty. If you've got a fever and a cough, brethren, that is another disqualifier. If your temperature is over 101 degrees, we're probably going to question if we allow you in, because that means you're running a fever, and that's concerning because that is an outward sign of COVID. May not be COVID. I'm not saying it is. Just things we're going to be concerned about. Breathing difficulty. Hey, myself, I have mild asthma. So yes, that's not a disqualifier. But again, we're just asking you, so when the person at the form, when they look at the form, they can look and say, yep, okay, that's fine. Where you're traveling from, you haven't been exposed to anybody with COVID. You have quarantined if you have. You're respecting your state guidelines. Your temperature's 99 degrees and the normal human body temp is 98.6. Or you're standing outside where it's cold and your temperature's 98.2. You're fine. Please come in. So as you come in the building, brethren, what you're going to find is, again, from a safety perspective, kind of going the other thing, the one thing we've done with the last few Grand Lodge sessions is we actually have law enforcement there. And law enforcement is not there that we have any concerns, we've had any threats or anything. It's just we find for the safety of a large group, again, we want to make sure everybody's safe. And especially when we get upstairs, where most of us will be upstairs in that building at one time, we'd like to make sure somebody doesn't enter the building with certainly some less than desirable means. So that's why we have law enforcement there. It's for our protection. Again, no concerns, brethren, you'll see them there. The other thing you will see there's always a Manchester firefighter there in the building that the Temple Building Association is required to have. As well, there will be myself. I'm an advanced emergency medical technician, and I have several other brother Masons who are emergency medical technicians, and they will be traveling around the room during the day. What they're really looking for is, if anybody has a medical emergency, please, in the West, one brother will be in the West, I will be in the East. If you have a medical issue during the event, please don't hesitate to raise your hand or say something. We'll come to your immediate assistance, brethren. That's what we're there for. The one other thing, brethren, we're going to ask you is, when you enter that building, we expect you to enter with your mask on and leave that mask on. Now, especially when you're walking around because of you breathing in and out and spreading the air, it's very important you keep that mask on. We understand sometimes you may get to your seat. When you get your seat up in Grand Lodge, you may take a moment, need to take the mask down for a moment to catch your breath. Understood. But brethren, once you do that for a moment, you need to put the mask back on. Everybody has those issues. We're not trying to cause you a medical emergency, but again, we just want to make sure you're being safe on that. The other thing you're going to see around the building is the sign, okay? And what you're going to see is the COVID spread of germs, talking about 6-foot distancing, certainly washing your hands. There will be hand sanitizer and hand sanitizer stations around the building. We will make sure ahead of time that the bathrooms are well supplied with paper towels and hand soap. And please use that. Don't hesitate to come in the building, check in, wash your hands, go up, use Purell. Again, good hand washing, we know, is the number one thing that limits the spread of COVID, brethren. The other thing we talk about when you come into on Saturday is this, an apron. So we all have an apron, right, brethren? Grand Lodge officers have aprons. They usually bring them with them. My brothers, if you're a lodge member that's attending, you should bring your own apron. That's your own lodge apron that you've used, your own personal apron. You should bring that. Again, we will be a supply, but what we don't want to do is, because of, again, spread of germs, we'd really prefer that you bring your apron with you and then you bring it up into the lodge and into the meeting. So what's going to happen again, you'll be cleared at the door. It's going to be right at the doorway, entrance to the building. You'll be cleared. You'll be allowed up in. There will be the credentials table where you will check in with your credentials. You will get your normal voting card of Grand Lodge. So again, brethren, many of you know, we don't normally supply pens. Make sure you bring a pen so you can write on that if you need to. Remember, the ballots have already been mailed to you. So if you've already cast your ballot for Grand Lodge offices, you're all set. You can certainly go right up. And again, we're going to be allowing you in the building at 8:30 and we're going to open at 9. So brethren, it's going to be important that we officially do this. We will have multiple people screening at the door. So again, if you come prepared with that contact tracing form, with a freshly laundered mask and no concerns, it's going to be a quick check, just like what happens in lodges all the time. We quickly check you. You go up in, check in the credentials. They're a very efficient group. They have multiple people doing that. And then we ask, use the facilities if you want, and certainly go upstairs. An important point to note, brethren, is this as well. There will be no coffee and donuts, and there will be no lunch at this session. Critically important for several of us, right? If you have somebody that occasionally is impacted by low blood sugar, you should definitely eat breakfast before you get there. Maybe you want to keep a couple little mini chocolate bars, maybe a granola bar, something in your pocket, something like that, brethren. So it's not going to be available. We will have an emergency situation. We will have that available if somebody starts having a diabetic attack. Again, you don't have to be a diabetic to have it. It's just low blood sugar. So understand, you should make sure and eat something before you go to the meeting. The Grand Master is planning on being very efficient at the meeting, but it could go to close to 1 o'clock. So that's about 4.5 hour time frame. So if you're somebody that needs it, please bring a little something. Myself, to Grand Lodge and meetings I go to, I often bring, a couple little granola bars that I can snack on, something that's going to give me some sugar so it builds up my blood sugar. Again, if you start to have an issue then, certainly understand, we will make sure if you have a coughing spit, need some water. Again, the medical team that's there, we're going to have that as a backup, but we ask that you be prepared to make sure with doing that. The other thing, brethren, is that, again, as myself, as the advanced EMT, Deputy Grand Master, with large gatherings, the state requires us to have a safety officer. I'm the safety officer. So if there's a question on anything there, I'm going to be readily available and they'll come to me and it's going to kind of be my call. So like at the door, my brothers, again, we want to be safe. We want a safe group. We don't want to expose anybody. And really, if you're not feeling well, please don't come. And if there's concerns, we're going to sit and talk about them and we'll work through them. But again, I need you to wear your mask, do your contact tracing. But again, if you're having concerns or issues, please let me know. And again, I will make sure I'm going to be there early and I will be there till the end. So if you have any concerns and like you see something you're concerned about, please let me know. I will make sure and address that as I'm the essentially designated safety officer as the state requires on any gatherings over 100. When you go up into the lodge room, the one thing is you're going to find that the seats are going to be blocked off. There's going to be folding seats out on the floor like we haven't probably seen at Grand Lodge in many years, but we're doing that so everybody's properly socially distanced in the lodge. So I know, brethren, some of you have a favorite place you sit in the lodge. Understand, if you get there and you're, and maybe you're 50th in line when you get there, you may not get the normal seat you get, but I promise you, you're going to get a seat where you're going to be able to spread out. So you're not going to be crunched up in a spot, but it might not be the spot that I know brethren have a certain particular spot they like to sit in Grand Lodge. But just understand, because of COVID, because of the restrictions we're under, we need to do that. So certainly, brethren, those are some of the major concerns of that. But understand, myself and some of my fellow medical EMTs, we'll have a medical team there. Again, we're there to make sure everything's good and you have a good day. And we will make sure there's a little something for you as you walk out. If you start feeling a little, I need a little bit. Sometimes when you start feeling a little under, it's because your blood sugar is dropping, and we'll make sure and have something for you on the way out the door as well. The other thing, brethren, one thing the Grandmaster just noted to me is Morrison Lodge is the Grandmaster's Award winner for 2020, and they will have a special seat where they designate right in Grand Lodge. That will be the only seat beyond the Grand Lodge officers that are in the essentially that do the opening and the ritualistic side. They will actually have a seat reserved. Everybody else, it will be come as you are, and just understand there'll be plenty of seats for all. We don't expect to be at capacity in the room. That's another thing. And certainly, work to get, good air circulation in the room. Understand, brethren, the Grandmaster wants out the session. We're going to be efficient about it, move things along. The other thing I want to note too is this, brethren. We are going to be recording. After the ritualistic opening, we will be recording the Grand Lodge session. And so let's say again, you come Friday night, you're your lodge representative, you're not feeling well and said, I don't want to expose people, but I really want to go to Grand Lodge. Don't worry about it. We're going to record the session. And on Sunday night, a notice will be going out this week. What we're going to do is on Sunday night, November 22nd at approximately 7 p.m., we're going to broadcast the session of Grand Lodge. So you actually be able to see what went on. You'll be able to see Brother Ryan Flynn's presentation and hear whatever presentations and discussion happened at Grand Lodge. So again, we want to make sure that we're out there, that certainly that information is being shared. So again, brethren, from once the ritualistic opening is done, we'll turn on the cameras like we did at the Lodges of Instruction. The whole session will be recorded. Then when the Grandmaster goes to close the session, then we will essentially turn it off. So you'll actually be able to see that on Sunday night if you weren't able to attend. For those of you looking now saying, hey, I won't be able to see it, don't worry about it. We will make sure that's seen. So what I'm going to do now, I've shared a lot of information. I'm going to pause for a minute and see what questions we have. And Brother Hotchkiss, I just figured I'd go through everything and then we can deal with the questions, Brother Hotchkiss. So go right ahead.
Thank you, Right Worshipful, for that excellent review of the safety protocols that we have in place. Greatly appreciate all your time and effort in that, and for volunteering to be our safety officer for the day. I do see one question from Brother David McCallan. Only concern is that with the no-touch temperature thermometers, they aren't always as accurate as they probably could be. He's had a fever in the past, and just a light low-grade fever. And used the temporal thermometer, and it said it was only 98. So do you want to kind of address that at all?
I'd be happy to. So Brother McCallan, I'm an emergency medical technician. I do this. I go out and do certainly deal with patients all the time. Understand, we're just trying to get an average baseline. You're right. I mean, a temporal thermometer it's a pretty close, let's be honest with you. There is the most accurate temperature, okay? The most accurate way to take a temperature. The ear actually can be, depending on how people feel, and especially if you've been outside, the ear temperature isn't that great. It's really a thermometer either in your mouth or in other orifices, and I won't get descriptive about that. That is the most accurate temperature, which none of us want to do. The temporal thermometers, I will tell you, that we use are pretty much the same as what they're using in hospitals when they're doing just a general temperature check. The most accurate, you're correct, is really the other types, but these are going to give us a good idea. Ultimately, again, we're simply going on, what the guidelines are being used. I'll be honest with you, I'm looking, all your restaurants are using temporal thermometers. Yes, I understand, but that's what's being used right out there in all the different organizations. So again, we're really trying to follow those guidelines, and that's again what really your safety and health guidelines are doing. But again, these temporal thermometer checks are the same ones. They actually use them in hospitals. When you go into the ER, they don't throw a little thermometer in your mouth automatically. They do a quick temporal check as a baseline. Again, we're just trying to get a range. But again, if we see somebody come in that has a temp of 102 standing outside in 40-degree cold air, that's probably a concern, and that's what we're looking for. Again, it's a basic check. The other thing is, that's why we wear a mask. That's why we social distance. So if somebody does, That's the whole point of social distancing, hand washing, and wearing masks, is having multiple things to try to stop the spread of essentially COVID. Because again, it's spread by droplets, right? That's how it's spread. That's why we're wearing masks and mandate the mask. So thank you for your comment. Great point. Just again, trying to go by what all the other guidelines, again, that our state government and the CDC is actually talking about. So thank you for the comment.
Thank you, Right Worshipful. I don't see any other questions at this time, but certainly, folks in the audience, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat session, and we will gladly answer them and pose them to the appropriate individual. At this time, I am going to talk a little bit about the New Hampshire Masonic Care meeting. Brethren, as we know, at the semi-annual communication, we typically have the New Hampshire Masonic Care annual meeting. As you heard from our Grand Master, attendance is limited this year. And as a result, we will not be able to have the full board in attendance at the meeting like we would normally do. As such, and because of the COVID concerns in general, the New Hampshire Masonic Care annual meeting will actually be held, but at a much limited basis. Some information and reports will be read at the semi-annual communication. You heard that on the agenda from the Grand Master. The balloting for trustees, which typically happens at this meeting, has actually gone out via email, and we thank all of those who have already cast their ballots. There are 12 individuals who are currently trustees on the ballot. There are no new trustees being added this year. So we would certainly ask you to respond to that email for those who have received it, who should be all the voting members of Grand Lodge who have email addresses. That will cover our base in terms of the requirement for the annual meeting. The bylaws require just a minimum of 50. Obviously, we typically have more than that in attendance. However, given the special circumstances this year, we decided to move forward with the electronic balloting specifically for New Hampshire Masonic Care trustees. That's really all I have to discuss at this point regarding the New Hampshire Masonic Care annual meeting. Any of those reports from the president, the chairperson, and the treasurer will be sent out either electronically for those who have email or via mail as a actual hard copy for those who do not. I don't see any questions at this point, so most worshipful, I will like to turn it back over to you to discuss the balloting procedure.
Very good. Thank you, Right Worshipful. So, brethren, had to make a tough decision about a month or so ago. We had no idea where we would be on the third Saturday in November, given the status of the pandemic. So I made the decision that we were going to move forward with mail-in ballots. This is, we're not setting a precedent here. This is, according to our grand historian, something that has happened before. It's not the way we prefer to do it, but I felt it was a necessity. Now, please understand that there are approximately 400 eligible voting members of the Grand Lodge of New Hampshire. And if you think about it, we typically get about 240 brethren that attend our Grand Lodge. And of that, there's probably 200 that are voting eligible. So what we're really doing is expanding the field and giving more of our brethren an opportunity to let their voice be heard in who they would like their next Grand Master and Grand Lodge line officers be. So we moved forward with that procedure. Voting members should have received a ballot in the mail. Hopefully they took the time to fill it out and return it to the Grand Lodge office. Those ballots are now currently sitting at the Grand Lodge office unopened. The plan will be that on the morning of Grand Lodge, those ballots will be retrieved from Milford and brought over to the Masonic Temple in Manchester. Again, unopened. I will then declare that I'll have tellers will declare the ballot open, and I'll have the teller's over in a location within the lodge room where hopefully the camera will be able to keep track of them as they're working their way through the ballots. They will all be counted, and then at the conclusion of the session, they will then be reported. And I very much look forward to what you all have to say with respect to your next Grand Master, because not me, he will do a great job. Guest speaker. So as I'd mentioned before, Right Worshipful Brother Ryan Flynn will be our guest speaker for the evening. And the topic of his discussion is how to join the Masonic Renaissance. You have probably heard this from our education committee before, especially from Right Worshipful Brother Ackridge, who is known to say that we've entered a bit of a Masonic Renaissance. And I think what he means by that is that it's kind of, in a sense, a new beginning. There are a lot of wonderful things happening within Freemasonry, certainly within New Hampshire, but throughout the world. And it's very important that we appreciate and celebrate this Renaissance that's taking place. I was at a wonderful Master Mason's degree earlier this week. They did a terrific job. We welcomed two newly raised Master Masons. And I believe that in looking at the power and passion that they exhibited that evening, that great things are happening in our fraternity. So I'm very much looking forward to Ryan's speech on how to join the Masonic Renaissance. And I would strongly encourage, if you're not able to attend in person, that you take Right Worshipful Brother Collins up on his offer and tune in, probably on YouTube, I believe is the platform we're going to use on Sunday evening for a replay of our annual and semi-annual sessions. So I believe that is what I have in terms of an agenda. I have a few closing comments. I do want to mention one more thing. I did mention that we're going to be having most of our appendant body speeches given at the Friday night banquet. The two speeches that we will be hearing from are from Alex Newberry, who is our State Master Counselor for DMLA, and Nicole Isaiah, who is our Grand Worthy Advisor. And I know both of these folks have very much been looking forward with anticipation for their opportunity to stand in front of Grand Lodge and talk about the wonderful, wonderful things that are happening with our youth organization. I did see that there's a question about the ladies program. Yes, my wife Tammy will be holding a ladies program on Saturday. It's going to be held at the Best Western Executive Court, which is the location where we're going to be having our Friday night banquet. She's got a guest speaker that's going to be coming in to talk, and there's going to be a brunch provided for the ladies in attendance. So that event too, I should have mentioned that earlier. So Mark Roth, thank you for bringing that up. The ladies on Saturday morning, while the men are at Grand Lodge, the ladies will be with my wife having a delightful brunch and speech. So, Right Worshipful Brother Hotchkiss, I see no additional questions, so I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Most Worshipful. Yeah, I don't see any other questions at this point. Certainly those in attendance, again, I would encourage you, if you have questions, please post them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them. At this point, that really concludes our program for the evening. I'll wait a second or 30 seconds or so to see if there's any other questions that arise.
According to your agenda, the Grand Master's closing remarks are at 8:15, and I've got 8:14. So,
okay.
So congratulations, Brother Hotchkiss, on another fantastic job of organizing this event.
Thank you, Most Worshipful. It's my pleasure.
All right, so brethren, I just want to reiterate, most of the time, like what we like to try to do with a Grandmaster's Q&A is to provide an update on current affairs, and then also talk about items of a Masonic nature. We thought as a team that it was important for you all to hear firsthand how we feel so confident that this event that will be taking place next Friday and Saturday will be done so with your safety first and foremost. I can't stress enough, if you don't feel comfortable coming, it is perfectly acceptable not to come. I would appreciate if you could send regrets to the Grand Lodge office so that they are aware of it. I see a note here from Nicola. Nicola, you'll be recognized on Friday evening, but you will be giving your speech on Saturday if that's possible. We do believe that we are providing a safe event. Certainly no accountability if you do not feel that that you don't feel comfortable coming, but we certainly hope that you do come. We do recognize that attendance has to be less than it normally would be. Again, it'll be about 80 to 90 people for the Grand Master banquet. It will be less than 125 people for our annual and semi-annual session. So I want to thank each and every one of you for joining this evening. God willing, we're going to have an event next weekend that you're all going to be proud of. This is certainly not the norm. We would not be normally having an annual and semi-annual event on the same day and accomplished in a 3-hour period. But I beg your forgiveness. I ask for your flexibility. I'm sure you all understand that what we're trying to do is in the best interests of the fraternity. That's always what we have first and foremost. So, Right Worshipful Hotchkiss, once again, thank you so much for gathering this group of experts to speak this evening, and to the brethren that were able to join this evening. Thank you so very much. Please stay safe, and I look forward to either seeing you this weekend or hope that you can check out the recording next Sunday night. Thank you all.